This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Starcom Radio Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and Digital Satellite Network. Worldwide toll-free 800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365, including the live show at www.xzoneradiotv.com. It is Tuesday, October the 6th in the year 2015, and my first guest tonight, X-Zone Nation, is Stephen KULLS. He is the founder, director of SasquatchDetective.com, and the author of 2 books, 50 Large and What Would Sasquatch Do? Now, Steve has had a lifelong fascination with the Bigfoot phenomenon since an early age. In 1998, after reading Monsters of the North Woods, Steve, like many of the general population, had believed that sightings were exclusive to the Pacific Northwest. But he learned that there were numerous sighting reports close to his residence in upstate New York. Steve began his first quest in 1998, seeking knowledge from other researchers in the field. In 1999, Steve started his first local grassroots organization, the Adirondack Research Organization. Here to tell us more about his investigation into Bigfoot, as well as Bigfoot sightings across the United States, is Steve KULLS. And Steve, always great having you on the show. How have you been, my friend?
I have been excellent. Thanks for having me on, Rob. I really get excited to spreading the word and educating people, so it's part of the job.
Okay. What is the latest about Bigfoot?
Well, it's been really quiet, at least on some of my fronts. The last couple of years, we've been inundated with stories and research projects that have basically gone nowhere. We had the Sierra KULLS incident where a person allegedly shot a juvenile Sasquatch that really any DNA that was ever tested turned out to be nothing but bear. We have the Ketchum study, which was really not done all scientifically, and that's drawn some fire. We've had the Psych study, which was a DNA test they did mainly dealing with the Himalayas and Nepal and that type of area, which turned out to be some sort of relic polar bear. So there's a lot of things that were big letdowns. Of course, there was the second big Bigfoot body hoax that went on a couple of years ago. It ended about a year and a half ago, and it's been really quiet since by the gentleman from Georgia. And since then, it's been really quiet. It's almost like there's a hush. People don't want to come forward again. And there's in the Bigfoot community itself, there's this big as there always has been, there's been this big paranormal versus flesh and blood debate. And that's gotten to a point where it's really gotten pretty vicious. And I kind of just step away from it and let people, have their own opinions. And pretty much that's that.
Steve, what convinced you that Sasquatch was real?
Well, I think what convinced me is, and when I went into this, I had a fascination when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. But as I got older, I kind of got more skeptical, and I had become a professional investigator and private investigator. And then in 98, I started talking to people. And in 99, I started talking to even more people, some witnesses, including a couple of police officers that have had sightings, some firefighters, even a scientist at one point in time. And that really had started to make me scratch my head. I'm a trained forensic interviewer, right. And I remember it came to be 1993. I was interviewing this gentleman, an ex-Vietnam veteran, Marine Corps truck driver now, and literally as he's telling me about his encounter, you could see the hair standing up on his arms, the jugular vein distension, and he was pretty scared. Yeah. So that was the first thing to make me go, there's something more to this than just hoaxes and misidentifications.
In your opinion, how come Bigfoot has not been, been found, been captured? How can he be so elusive with all of today's technology?
Well, I believe it took quite a while for them to discover the giant panda.
Right.
In fact, that had gone on for 70 years, on and off. And I think a couple of factors come into play. First of all, the creature we're dealing with is undoubtedly super intelligent, not as intelligent as us per se, but on an intelligence level, it's pretty smart. And I think its survival skill is evasion. Second of all, I don't think there's been, as far as a professional approach or putting a lot of money into, like the way they would do it from the aspect of a panda bear. There's been expeditions over the years that have had some funding, but not to the level, not the consistent funding that the search for other animals like the billy ape had received. So I think that's a couple of reasons why.
What's the most interesting story about Bigfoot you have ever heard?
Well, it always never ceases to amaze me when people are at a cabin and they've had activity where they feel it, walking on their porches. And we had one like that back in the 70s, and it's always fascinating. It was in Vermont. And these people had been having sightings on and off through the years. And then one night they were all sitting around in their living room, and they could hear it, and they actually saw it creeping around their porch. And they could hear it walking on their porch. And to me, those kind of stories are the most interesting because they're getting really close to humans. And
well, let me ask you this, Steve. What's the craziest?
It's been a fascinating.
Yeah, Steve, we're having problems with Skype. You're coming in very chatted. So I don't know. We didn't hear your last response.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, we're having problems, hearing you over here.
Okay. Do you want to call me on a landline? That may work a little bit better.
Sure. Is that the number I've got? That ends in 59. Okay, Steve. Yep. We're going to take a commercial break. We're going to call you right up, Steve. And sorry about this, X-Zone. This is real live radio. This is what happens. Steve Kull is my special guest. www.extremeparanormalteam.com and www.sasquatchdetective.com. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Steve and I return after this short break. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. I believe we have Steve KULLS with us. Steve, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you, Rob?
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much, Steve. Sorry about the inconvenience to you, Steve, and sorry to you, the members of the X-Zone Nation. Steve, once again, thanks very much for coming on the show. I know you're a busy guy these days. In fact, you've always been busy ever since I've known you. You keep you're like the Energizer bunny that keeps going and going and going and going and going.
Yeah, I do, and it was about 5 years ago I started jumping into the paranormal stuff too.
Yeah,
not that I think there's anything paranormal to do with the Sasquatch,
right?
But it was kind of an interest of mine, and that's been a remarkable journey as well.
Steve, as a forensic investigator, what has been, if any forensic evidence to substantiate the claims that Bigfoot is real?
Well, I think the work of Jimmy Chilcutt, when he did the dermal ridge analysis on several of the castings, I think that was very significant. One thing that I've run into, and it's on my website under the archives, is I had gotten a cast in 2006. A few years later, one of my friends, another researcher, said, "Hey, did you see the cast I got last year?" And he showed me, and I realized it was the same foot. So when we compared the actual tracks, they were the same heel width, they were the same toe heel length, but the toe splay was different. And that was awesome because there was a couple of unique items on it, including an elongated middle toe and a callus. So, I mean, you're looking at them side by side, you can tell it's the same foot. But his toe splay was a little bit wider than mine, and his toes were more clear, which made a lot more sense because it was in a softer substrate. But what we have here is a flexible foot that was found within a mile of each other 2.5 years later. So that by any means is forensic evidence of, there's a footprint and there's the evidence right there. I mean, that is
exactly
forensic evidence.
What about the Gimlin-Patterson film? What's your take on that, Steve?
Well, there's been a lot of claims, and that was my first foray here on the X-Zone. But there's been a lot of claims, but a lot of those claims are stories as far as I was the guy in the stoop story by Bob Hieronymus.
Yeah.
We know that the story had deviated, when he first premiered, and he first told it to how he's telling it now, especially in the fact that, he was saying he didn't show it to anybody, but then later on now he's saying he showed up at the bar to show everybody. And just the fact that there's no suit present to say, oh, here's the suit. And then you go with Philip Morris, the costume maker. Well, Bob Hieronymus does not describe the same suit that Philip Morris describes. So there's inconsistencies there. Since I've been on, I've actually had a chance to meet Bob Gimlin even more. And I just, in meeting him, it's just overwhelming to think that he would be kind of lying about the whole thing. I mean, he's just one of those genuine guys, warm-hearted, hey, let me, I would give you a shirt off his back to,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've heard good things about Gimlin, but Patterson had a checkered past.
Very true. As far as, I guess the big thing, I guess that what skeptics like hanging on to is, here's a guy who wants to get a Bigfoot on film, and he does. And because he wanted to get a Bigfoot on film for a documentary and he actually gets it, we should be scratching our heads and being suspicious of that. And I find that kind of strange because I go out in the forest all the time,
right? And
if I could get it on film, I would. And would the same argument be made of any Bigfoot researcher that came back with a film, say, hey, look, I've got to film a Bigfoot. And people would turn around and say, well, that's got to be a hoax because you went looking for it.
Well, I think the difference, Steve, number one, would be that you are known and respected as a Bigfoot researcher. You've got respect. You've paid your dues. Another thing, you've been searching for Bigfoot for years. Let's look at the other side of the coin. Patterson, checkered past. First time he goes out to get to film Bigfoot, he does. We're talking night and day here, Steve.
Yeah, well, everybody has an opinion to it, and I can't argue that opinion.
Right.
But what I can say is that Patterson went in the woods quite a bit, in finding tracks and doing research. In fact, there was the first ever alleged Bigfoot body hoax there was a spat between Patterson and Renee DeHinden, between the Patterson group and Renee DeHinden's group, and John Green was kind of caught in the middle of it. So, it is what it is. I mean, it's kind of like, Paul Freeman in his video, the late Paul Freeman.
Yes.
And, on stage, it looks like a real good print, and he was a well-respected researcher for a while, and then there was a little chicanery, so it made his past checkered, too. And that's unfortunate, that people make these missteps. And I kind of look at it this way, too, is that, a lot of these guys who've been doing this, I mean, they're not public relations experts.
Right.
So sometimes they do things that are kind of off, off the norm. There was one particular individual I know, he does not interview well, and he made a statement that I'm sure was just a misstatement, but he did it on live TV, and they went right after him, and they went right for the jugular arm, and it made him look really bad for a while.
Wow.
So, that's why when I talk, I try to take a breath, try to at least think of what I'm going to say before I say it, and if I don't know something about something, I'll admit that, because there's no admission to ever being wrong or not knowing the answer to something.
So in your opinion, Steve, why are so many people hoaxing evidence then?
Well, I think there's several things that come into play. Number one, there's the joke factor. Everybody wants to have a joke, but I think in a lot of cases, it's some sort of in certain cases there is a psychological incident or a psychological factor into it. For example, I remember getting a phone call, a report from this guy who had like a 15-minute encounter with a Sasquatch. And he was describing, the first thing I had him describe was the terrain he was on. He said the grass was knee-high and all this other stuff. So I had him describe the Sasquatch, and then I asked him to describe the Sasquatch's feet. Mm-hmm. And he completely described the feet, and I'm scratching my head. Well, if the grass was knee-high to him, how could he even see the feet of this creature?
Right.
Obviously, he couldn't have. But then I always do a little probing questions about somebody's past, and you do that very nonchalantly. And it turned out the man had just been recently divorced.
Oh.
So I think what had happened is, and the guy was an older guy, so I think what happens is that, something, a psychological trigger is like, I need a little excitement. I want to feel like I belong to something. And that's what they do. There was another one that was on another radio show that this guy was having him in his backyard. And it was just an old guy taking care of his sister. And two guys went out there and they said, this is in the middle of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are some psychological factors. Then you get the pranksters, the kids that want to make it, do a little YouTube video, ha, 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 chuckle, chuckle, see if we can't fool people. And actually, the first people to ever really start that was Penn and Teller with the Sonoma video hoax, really. I think that was the real big one when it started coming out on the computer. They dedicated a website. And that was like one of the first cases that I ever came across that I went after. And I, 3 months before they admitted to it, I was telling everybody this is a hoax based on this, and I think it's made to make somebody, especially in this field, look like an idiot by saying, "Oh yeah, that's real."
Gotcha.
And then finally you have the profiteer or the bounty hunter, where either you're going to take advantage of a person that's having these, like the old guy, they're going to take advantage of this, and they're going to try to conjure up this great story to make money on it. You can read about that in 50 Large, or you're gonna do it to go on a nationwide tour with this circus act with a rubber suit in the back of a trailer, and it's those types of things that really turn the general public off. And to be honest with you, it turns a lot of Bigfoot researchers off when this stuff goes on.
Steve, with all the different TV shows on so-called reality shows, are they an asset to serious researchers like yourself or a hindrance?
Well, let me talk specifically. There was one show that came out in Animal Planet, and that started the whole thing. And I don't think it's altogether a bad show. I think that, they have a timetable to meet, and I've been on there, and I've helped them with a few episodes. And there's a timetable to be met, and unfortunately they can't always investigate as much as they want, but they try to keep a serious tone to it. So they made a lot of people come forward and say, yes, I've been having this. But now what we're getting is I'm getting inundated with, well, I heard tree knocks. Well, I heard this sounds. And we're getting a lot of these sound audible ones, but no, and those are kind of, okay, that's great. I want to know what people see. That's the important thing. The other shows that have come out, where generally it's like, how should I put it? It's like Duck Dynasty meets Monster Hunters, and those are the shows that are being put out there, and they're not really doing us all too good. Because when people think, and people that are big fans of that show, they think we all go running out there, yeah, let's go get them, bang, 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 and we're not like that. We set up camera traps, we set up audio traps, we do our calls, we do some sound blasting, we see what we have.
I've got to be honest with you. I can't understand what anybody sees in that stupid show, Duck Dynasty.
It's silly and it's very staged, and I think that's what people want nowadays. They just want to escape, and I understand the methodology behind it. I'm not really a big fan of the show. I think I may have seen 2 episodes, but like you said, I'm very busy to be actually sitting around watching TV a lot.
Yeah, I guess that's why Donald Trump is doing so well too.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. Steve, what about scat evidence or hair follicles that have any ties to DNA? Anything like that when it comes to Bigfoot?
Well, my good friend Paul Bartholomew says that, I've seen it, and I've seen the letter in Chinese. He actually somehow got a hold of, and actually I think it was his protege, Dr. Warren Cook, that actually got the hair in the first place, was this Yeti hair that had been tested in China that came back as an unknown, type of primate.
Right.
I know there was some hairs that have came out that went to Dr. Henry Fehrenbach when he was doing this. He has since retired from the field. But I know there was some hair samples there that came back to unknown primate. But anything lately has been mostly, horse, cattle, and of course nobody's seeing the actual creature leave this hair behind. So when you find a piece of hair on a barbed wire fence or on a tree, it just like anything else, it's like throwing a dart. What are the odds that it's going to be this or that? I mean, I could find buffalo hair and say, hey, this may be horse hair, and it's buffalo hair.
Sure.
So, it's like throwing a dart. You really don't know. It's the same thing with trail camera placement. You could put 3 trail cameras up, 5 trail cameras up, but there's an infinite number of spots or routes of travel an animal can take, to avoid your camp.
Let's go back in time a bit, Steve. What about the Native Americans in their folklore, in their mythology, in their tribal history? Does Bigfoot or Sasquatch play a part in it?
Well, absolutely. In fact, the Iroquois, which is the Native American tribes that were in my area, called it the Adenarhe, and it stood for stone or stonish giant, I believe. And that was a very common term, and there's probably at least 5 tribes that have called it like their variation of stone giant or stonish giant. I know there's one translation that literally meant evil god that hides under the cover of woods.
Right.
Mountain boss or man of the mountains. So, the Native American descriptions of these things are very spot on, because a lot of people will say when they see it, watching their campfire, they'll be standing there like a statue, just not moving. And of course, you figure it's a black or a brown animal, with the hair reddish brown, standing next to a tree, to give it some degree of camouflage per se. And it just stands there. Sometimes people will note that it's swaying, but that kind of means to me that, it could look like a stonish giant, because of their height. And then you have the other characteristics, evil god that hides under cover of woods. Well, that describes the Sasquatch dead on, as far as their behaviors. So I think there is something to it. And we have found a lot of things in Native American mythology that have, turned out to be true in actuality. Maybe not to the degree of spiritualism they say it is, but they certainly have had the physical characteristics.
What about the park rangers, state police, local law enforcement, sheriffs, game wardens? Do they help you with reports, or is the research for Bigfoot a lot like it is in the UFO community, very severed?
It is very severed, and and it's strange because I've actually talked to a park ranger in the Adirondacks who said, you know what, I don't think you're crazy. There could be anything out here in the woods. And
yeah.
I was kind of shocked he said that to me. I've talked to some of the Navajo park rangers that have told me stories about, foot tracks, as Native Americans like to call it, and people saying, can you pick up my camp because we're too scared to pick it up.
Wow.
And they won't say why. But I do know there's park rangers that have seen it. I know of at least two of them that have. In fact, one of them was from Oklahoma and said, "Oh yeah, we know it. We know they're there, but they just have an ongoing policy that we don't really want to talk about it too much." I know police officers that have seen it. We've had Brian Goslin up in Whitehall. And Dan Gordon, before he passed away, actually passed a lie detector test and saw that. But, when I did my Monster Quest, it's I'm going to show you the kind of prejudice that's on it. Well, the NCON representative made a statement, well, if these things were out here, people would be seeing them. And I kind of scratched my head, what kind of statement is that? When people are seeing that. And then the second comment was made by an anthropologist from Buffalo who turned around and said, well, there's no evidence that can support that says that North America could support a large primate. And that floored me because last I checked, Homo sapiens, us, are large primates.
True.
So, and the Native Americans had been there, living off the land for,
yes.
Since the Stone Age. So I don't really get it.
All right, Steve, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Stephen KULLS is our special guest. Great having Steve with us tonight. He is the founder and director of SasquatchDetective.com. And we're going to talk to Steve a little later on about his new website, ExtremeParanormalTeam.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. The hour is dedicated to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Abominable Snowman, Yeti. All those names mean one thing. One big hairy monster. Fact or fiction? I think it's fact. I really do. Steve and I will be back on the other side of this break with the news as we continue from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, live and around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Starcom Radio Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and Digital Satellite Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus on Amazon, October 1st, and then wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Jeff Gilson didn't go out looking for adventure, danger, or the answers to most of the controversial political intrigues of the past 30 years. But he found all three when he began investigating the mysterious death of his close friend, Margaret Thatcher's favorite speechwriter. Just an ordinary guy living in a small, sleepy suburb 20 miles outside of London, Jeff's questions provoked a powerful response on both sides of the Atlantic. He was shot at, warned off by the CIA, and formed a close bond with one of Israel's most notorious intelligence officers. Relive Jeff's gripping adventure in his fast-paced book, Maggie's Hammer. Peel away the layers of establishment deception and discover, as Jeff did, that his friend was an assassin with British intelligence, that Great Britain has been America's secret hitman for the past 30 years, and that Princess Diana was not the target in that Parisian tunnel. All of this and more when you visit www.maggieshammer.com and find the link to buying this explosive book online. More and more ordinary people feel they no longer have control of their lives. Jeff fought back. He asked the difficult questions. He set out to redesign his own destiny, and you can do the same using Maggie's Hammer as your guide. Don't waste a moment. Buy it today. Visit www.maggieshammer.com. The Carl O. Helvey Holistic Cancer Foundation is a new nonprofit foundation that focuses on a holistic approach to cancer that includes physical, mental, spiritual, and political aspects. Cancer education, research, and care are provided for all types of cancer patients. You can listen to interviews with cancer doctors and survivors and read research on holistic aspects of cancer at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com. That's www.holisticcancerfoundation.com. Hear ye, hear ye. The king has just announced the release, no pun intended, of the latest book of comedy, The Endearing Fart by Eileen Dover, noted fartologist. The endearing fart from our butt does it dart. Without it we'd all suffer inside. So let it be, release it with glee. It's not comfy or easy to hide. The social norm would have us conform to withholding our gas for decorum. I'll not be a martyr, but rather a farmer. I'll risk being thought of a moron. But noisy but free, come fart with me. Will not be shy or unyielding. A smelly toot? Who gives a hoot? It's natural, healthy, good feeling. The enduring fart is the perfect gift just for about anyone. Buy now at tinyurl.com/to-buy now.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X Zone. That's right. Transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Welcome back, Exonation. Steve KULLS is our special guest of this hour, www.sasquatchdetective.com and www.extremeparanormalteam.com. Steve, what do you think it'll take to get the final proof, the smoking gun that will satisfy everyone that Bigfoot is real?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the thing to satisfy everyone will probably be a specimen. That's the unfortunate thing about it. That's just the way science is. They demand a body a lot of times. So, there's been more. I've always said this. There's more evidence to support the existence of a Sasquatch than there is to support a Gigantopithecus. Because you think about it, nobody's ever seen a Gigantopithecus. Because it existed so far long ago.
Right.
But the only thing they have really to prove that it exists is a jawbone and a handful of teeth. They don't have a femur of a Gigantopithecus. They don't have a vertebrae of a Gigantopithecus, just a jawbone and some teeth. And that's, if they can go on the existence on that, well, then maybe if somebody can come up with a combination where we can get some DNA, that we have it filmed while the extraction is taking place, audio in place, maybe a combination of the technologies, maybe that'll satisfy science. But I tend to doubt it the way they've treated this mystery a bit.
What research tips or Bigfoot hunting tips do you have for people who may want to try their luck at getting the proof that Bigfoot does exist?
Well, the first thing they have to realize is that unless they actually see a creature do something, it's not evidence. Like, they can show me tree structures and bends and stones being moved all day long or food missing off a bench. If you've got no picture of a Sasquatch doing that, you've got no evidence. As far as track evidence, that footprints are a form of forensic evidence. So yes, tracks are evidence. But tree bends are not, nests are not, tree markers, as some people have called it, and I just eternally bang my head against the wall sometimes when it comes to that. That's not evidence. Even sometimes audio evidence is a little shaky because you really don't see what's making the noise. The best you can do is just get out there, try to get some pictures off, or try to get some audio, or get some tracks. And that's what researchers have to do. And a lot of times I tell people, don't look down, look up, because a creature that size is going to be moving brush that's probably about the 5'10", 6 foot level easily.
Wow.
And I've actually been on a sighting report that had occurred the previous week, and I actually had tracked whatever it was they watched right down to the road. You can actually see the brush being moved at like the 6 foot, 5'8" level, and that right out and down to the road. Of course, once it hit the road, it's any guess where it could have went.
Sure. Steve, have you ever found any tracks or any evidence of a younger Bigfoot?
Yes. In 2012, kind of funny, I got out of my tent to use a tree, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I look up and I thought I saw this 5 foot brownish figure running across the trail. I just kind of rubbed my eyes on it. No, I just didn't get enough sleep. I'm gonna go. Used the tree, came back, went to sleep. Well, why don't you know, the next morning somebody had found a 9-inch track running perpendicular to the trail, just where I had seen it running.
Oh my gosh!
So I was like, you got to be kidding me.
All right, let's talk a bit now about your switch over from Bigfoot to the paranormal. What happened? Why the switch?
Well, it was something that always interests me. It's kind of neat because, the reason I got into the Bigfoot research wasn't necessarily because I had a traumatic episode. Like a lot of people get involved in research because they've seen something, heard something. back in the early 90s, I was actually a UFO investigator for APRO. So to me, investigation to mysteries just comes naturally. I mean, I was a professional investigator. So when I get these mysteries, that's really intriguing. I'd like to go out and just, try it and see what it's like. And that's what I started doing. And I joined this one group back in 2010, and in 2013, a couple of us decided to break off and form our own team because they weren't necessarily meeting what our needs were.
Right.
And it's just something that I saw on TV. Of course, we saw Ghost Hunters, and that was really the first show to bring a lot of this kind of stuff to the forefront. And it was like, I'm going to join a paranormal team, and that's what I did for a few years. And then we just broke off, did our own thing, and we're having our goal and our focus at the Extreme Encounter paranormal team is basically to help people. Even though we do very few public events, and the public events we do is to benefit historical societies. Mm-hmm. For example, Halloween we're doing a ghost hunt and a dinner at a old church that was built in the 1850s, and we're doing that, and all the funds are going right back to the church to help maintain the building and the cemetery they have. And that's what we do. And the flip side, our payoff is getting to investigate in these wonderful old buildings, and see what kind of evidence we can collect, be it EVP, be it videos. And so far we've been very, very lucky. We've been out to the Lizzie Borden house. We caught an EVP in the Lizzie Borden house, just a very quick investigation there while we were on tour.
Right.
We went to Gallows Hill out in Salem, which is the actual place where they hung the witches. Got some. Not only did we get a few good EVPs, we got actually a footstep, which was really creepy because you can hear somebody take a step and you just turn and go, "That wasn't me." And then we also got something on video there, some light anomalies, and something that turned my recorder off.
Wow.
And it's kind of, I was actually videotaping the flashlights and the recorders, mm-hmm. and this light anomaly comes by, and then my recorder turns off. We've been to Saratoga Battlefield. We actually think we got a cannon shot in one of our recording sessions. So we've, been to some of the historical places. We just did an ad hoc, a quick 45 EVP session because we had the opportunity to do it at Bobby Mackey's World down in Kentucky just last month. Mm-hmm. So we're still feathering through our audio with that. Some of the stuff is just totally amazing what we get. The Shanley Hotel, we believe we're still analyzing, but we believe we may have caught an apparition actually moving past one of the cameras into a room right behind somebody that was standing there. So some of the stuff is really, it just blows your mind, and that's just the stuff that we've caught on evidence. But when you're there, I mean, I've been to locations where I've seen chairs move by themselves, not very far, just like somebody just bumped it or something, sure. But nobody's near it. And then there's a couple of times, especially the Shanley Hotel down in Appomattox, New York. It's supposed to be one of a very haunted place. Ghost Hunters has been there before. And in that case, I was doing EVP sessions, and then we could distinctly hear the chair in the room behind us move. And when we asked to do it again, it did it again. So it was pretty some pretty creepy stuff. But it's not so much when I do those things. Not so much really to gather evidence. I like collecting the EVPs. To me, it's just a fascination. Now, conversely, when somebody's having an issue, and we did have that happen, I have basically have been acting as the acting demonologist to the team. So if we have we don't back off from cases where people are claiming that they have issues with, the preternatural or the inhuman spirits. And that's, we have no problem going in there and trying to resolve that issue. And usually it's either nothing's going on, 2, this requires a psychologist, or 3, let's see what we can do. We can bless the house, or do a house blessing, or what we call a deliverance, which is basically exorcism on a house. On a person directly, I generally would prefer it to clergy. And we do have a spiritual advisor on our team, who is clergy. So
how do you
put a lot of people?
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you how do you conduct your investigation? Let's say Jane Smith calls you and says, "Steve, I think there's a ghost or a demon in my house." What do you do?
Well, we sit down. We conduct a long interview with the person.
Mm-hmm.
We talk, and usually Stacy, who is the other founder of the group, she'll sit there and do a long thing. Then I'll talk with her for him or her for a while. We'll see if there's any psychological needs. Then we do baseline readings of the house entirely. We measure all the EMF in the house, because sometimes EMF can make people hallucinate or do strange things. But we do that. We run through all our measurements. And in one particular case, and this happened, we did that. We interviewed this woman, and she was having a lot of activity by her bed. And when we talk, as we're doing the EMF readings, we realized that she had this electric typewriter, and her electrical panel wasn't throwing up as much EMF as this electric typewriter. Right. And this electric typewriter was on the desk next to her bed, and that's where that's the area she was having all the activity. So we talked. We did some sessions. Really didn't get much results. So we turned around, we talked about it, and he said, "Listen, let's try something. I want you to unplug your typewriter and move it. Just get it right out of the room, and let me know what happens." Well, wouldn't you know, all the ghost activity stopped.
Huh.
So I think really it was the high EMF that was, causing her to hallucinate or hear things that weren't there. Because I guess the EMF has a very similar effect like infrasound does.
Gotcha. Steve, why do ghosts hang around bars and taverns?
Well, we all like to drink. No, I'm just kidding.
Good one, Steve.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why spirits stay where they are. My thought process, and this is completely theoretical, of course, is that there's some spirits that don't want to let go, and there's some spirits that they were loners in life, and maybe they just want to be loners in death. And you have your some spirits, like spirits of children, they're trapped to get a message out or something.
Right.
I am not really into necessarily the high spiritual side of it. I mean, yes, I'm a demonologist. I try not to. I don't really. My job is not to really ask about what's going on with the human spirits. My job is to delve with the inhuman spirits. But as far as the human spirits, why they must have some kind of task left in their list. Now, there's also another theory, conversely, that in actuality, what we're looking at is not the afterlife. We're actually looking in a dimensional split. Whereas when we get this, what we're doing is we're getting feedback from another dimension, and where people are having hauntings and seeing things. A lot of times, it's just cracks in the dimension, and they're just bleeding into this dimension. And that's one theory too. I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but that's another way I've heard people describe it as well.
So what is the strangest thing that has happened to you as a demonologist? Because UFO investigator to Bigfoot investigator, now to demonologist.
Yeah. The strangest thing I ever did, I had to conduct a deliverance on a residence, and this woman had. We had talked to her. We had conference called her several times, spoke to her at hours. We actually got asked in by somebody that was trying to help her, and they couldn't deal with it, so they asked us to come in and help. And this woman had been attacked, and she was what we would call in very late stages of oppression. She was going to the doctor. She was having internal bleeding. They didn't know why, where she was internally bleeding from. We saw pictures of her having wounds on her arms, bite marks, even wounds on her tongue. All inexplicable. She'd get up and say this. She also had the weirdest orbs I've ever seen, and I'm not a big believer in orbs per se, but these orbs were just something that made me go, huh. And there was also pictures of black mists in her house that she has taken once in a while as well. So we knew something was there. We talked to her. All right, we'll go out to the house and we'll do a deliverance on the house. And, the other group that was there was another paranormal group. They said, yeah, there's really some, really deep stuff, dark stuff going there. So we arrived for this the deliverance, and of course it was a 5-hour drive. It was actually in the Buffalo region, and so we go in, and one of the team members I have is actually a sheriff's deputy, and he came in to assist with us. And she has a couple of dogs as well, and we got there, and she looked like her stomach was so distended, she looked like she was 7 months pregnant.
Wow.
At the time, and she was in a lot of pain. And all right, we did, so we go up, we do the deliverance. So it's basically just a rite of exorcism, and we did it in her bedroom because that's where she felt most depressed. Where is it the worst? It's in the bedroom. Okay, boom. We'll conduct the ceremony in the bedroom, and we did. And towards the end of the ceremony, the dogs started going crazy for no reason at all. We actually had a team member down there going, I don't know what happened to the dogs. All of a sudden, they just started barking. And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And we go downstairs, and, now she's on the couch having pain. We had finished it. We all agreed that the upstairs was now a lot lighter than it had ever been. We go downstairs, and all of a sudden, she starts to vomit into a trash can. And everybody was around her. I didn't. I stayed off to the side, and I just kept reciting a large prayer. Next thing you know, after she threw up, she's like, I feel better. And she stood up, and all of a sudden I heard gasps. Her stomach was completely normal.
Oh, my gosh.
The distension was completely gone. So that was probably the weirdest thing. That was 10 months ago, going on 11 months ago, and knock wood, she has been living a great life and feeling 100% better. No more internal bleeding, no nothing. So I can't explain it. I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't been there.
So when you go in to do a deliverance, is this a generic prayer or a generic exorcism that you would do? Or how do you I always thought that you had to find out which demon it was before you could exorcise it.
Well, I kind of look at it this way. Ed Warren had always said that, he trained people to say that, the rite, no matter what rite, he's always used the Roman Catholic rite, and that works. Yeah. So that's what we use, the Roman Catholic, rite. Doesn't necessarily mean that the person has to be spiritual or anything like that. We leave an instruction list for people too, because, I've had people that said, oh yeah, well, I tried to figure out what's going on and I'm trying to get EVPs and it made it worse. Well, of course you invited it in. So we try to, we also give them a big list of, what not to do after everything's done. And, if people if they don't want that particular type of rite, well then, they have to go to somebody else.
Steve, the time is up for tonight. What is your message for the X-Zone Nation tonight?
Hey, everybody, all I got to say is keep on squatching.
Steve, always great talking to you. Keep up the great work, my friend. If anything important comes up, let me know. We'll get you on the show as fast as we can.
Will do, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Great talking to you again, Steve. Take care of yourself, my friend. X-Zone Nation, Steve KULLS has been our guest this hour. He's the founder-director of SasquatchDetective.com. And also now with ExtremeParanormalTeam.com. That's, once again, SasquatchDetective.com and ExtremeParanormalTeam.com. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center. Whoa, Craig, that was a little loud. Our broadcast center here in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Starcom Radio Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and Digital Satellite Network. Worldwide, toll-free 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our main website where you can listen 24/7, 365. XZoneRadioTV.com.